Do you want to make your own podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. And this is the platform that I use because it makes it so simple to record and distribute your podcast all in one place using your cell phone. What you need to do is download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello, my name is Catherine Moore, social worker, mom, coffee lover, and founder of Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. I'm so excited you found my podcast. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We will hear the stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Before we hop into this amazing episode, I wanted to take a moment to be transparent with you and explain what Social Workers Rise is and where we're going. So, Social Workers Rise is more than a podcast. My vision is to create a social worker family, a place and a community where we as social workers can feel supported, empowered, and equipped to do all of the jobs that we need to do. And it's going to be continually evolving as times evolve. So, this was born out of an emotion that I had. I felt lonely in the field, that I didn't really have very many places to go. I didn't really have too many people to look up to as mentors and to be able to ask questions. And I didn't know where to go to find that one-on-one connection with people that I really, really needed to ask questions, to express how I felt, to voice my frustrations, and to even have that feedback like, hey, Catherine, I think you need to take a break. You really seem kind of burnt out right now. Like, maybe you should just, reevaluate, is this job worth it? So, just to have that sounding board and that really strong community of support. So, that is what I envision for Social Workers Rise. And the way that we're doing that is one, through this podcast, and two, we're going to be offering ongoing learning and virtual training opportunities and a way to create a community. So with that, we're having our really first big course series coming up for you if you are a person who is striving to be a therapist. You are likely thinking about getting your license to provide clinical therapy. You may be already doing one-on-one clinical therapy, but don't really feel very confident in your skills and really want a stronger skill set. And also for new roles, new graduates who are entering these roles who you have the basics, but you really just need to tie it in all together and essentially learn how to take the client through the therapeutic process. So this 5-course series is actually called Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist. And this is going to be launching this summer. I'm very excited, and I hope that you are too if you are considering just getting stronger in your clinical skills. This was made for you. And we are still developing it right now. So please feel free to reach out for me. I have a VIP list, a list for very interested professionals. And if you would like to get on that VIP list to be the first to know when registration opens for this event, then shoot me an email, slide up in my DMs at Social Workers Rise on Instagram. Let me know that you're interested, and I would be happy to add you to that VIP list. So for now, let's hop into this episode and get started. Hello, Tabitha. How are you?
Hi, Catherine. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining Social Workers Rise. I'm really excited about our topic today for self-care. So thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing wonderful, considering how things are
Yes.
now, but I'm doing good.
Okay, good. And I'm grateful that it's Friday. We're recording on a Friday. So I'm feeling optimistic for the weekend.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I understand. I just wanted to just get to know you a little bit more, and I saw, your the work that you're doing and the business that you've created. So I really just wanted to kind of unpack all of that and talk about self-care, which is like one of your main areas that you focus on with your business. So first, I know that you are a licensed social worker. How did you know that you wanted to get into social work to begin with? What was that like for you?
I would say, in the beginning, I've always had this desire to help people. I wasn't sure when I was younger in what capacity I would do that in. My grandmother was a nurse, so I kind of toyed around with that idea, and then I realized I didn't like science, so I was like, "Oh, okay, let's let's revisit that." And I just kind of, went through school and kind of toyed around with different majors, and then I got to the end of my undergrad, and my brother became ill, and he was kind of in and out of the hospital. And at one point, he was discussing his options for a kidney transplant, and we had to meet with a social worker, and it kind of just hit me. That's what didn't quite I wasn't able to place what that looked like for me in social work, but when I met her, it kind of, the bell went off, that was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an advocate for people, a bright spot when they were dealing with a difficult prognosis, and just kind of be there for them and help guide them through that process. So when I decided I was going to apply for grad school and pursue social work seriously, health concentration was kind of where I was headed and what I chose.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I saw, on your website that your brother was a really big a really big motivator for why you do social work and
Yeah.
and why you're in the field. So that's super powerful. So do you do medical social work, or have you done that? What kind of social work have you done?
So I, when I graduated, I got a position as a hospital liaison for a mental health agency, servicing homeless individuals. So I wasn't in like stationed in the hospital, but I was in and out of hospitals, kind of doing assessments and connecting with homeless individuals who needed our services. So I was that first person that they saw, um, and as they were being discharged, I was their main um, source of support, and getting them housed. So I did that for a while. And then I also worked in rape crisis. So I was kind of in and out of the hospitals, supporting individuals who had been sexually assaulted. And then I decided to make a move, and I moved to Georgia, and I accepted a position in suicide prevention, which is what I'm currently doing now.
That sounds super intense. So I mean, I'm thinking of all of the crisis intervention you have to do, all of the
Yeah.
stories that you've heard, all of the possible vicarious trauma that you have been through.
Yeah.
how did you handle the stress of those jobs?
I one thing I'll say is that I had a really good supervisor when I was working with the homeless individuals. Um, and I think that helped a lot because I enjoyed the work that I did. I didn't, for the most part, I didn't really feel overly stressed. I had more of probably a hard time cutting off work. So I was kind of like bringing work home, like trying to finish work at home. But in terms of support and my experience there, luckily I had a good supervisor who was supportive. So the stress wasn't um, as bad as it could have been. But luckily I kind of also kind of caught it before it got too bad as well. So,
Okay. How did you catch it?
um, I realized kind of just what I said in terms of like bringing work home. I was very mobile because I'm back and forth at different hospitals in the city. So we would have our laptops. So I found myself bringing my bag into my apartment. And then to finish work or to finish assessment, I would be sitting down trying to finish it. And then next thing I know, it'd be time to go to bed and I'd wake back up and I'd kind of like continue that cycle. So it was just kind of that it just hit me like you're not doing anything but going to work and coming home. And then you're doing more work when you come home. So um, it kind of hit me in that way, just realizing that I wasn't making time for much else in my life. And then also, soon after that, I was also diagnosed with lupus. Um, and for me, the symptoms that I deal with lupus is mainly fatigue and joint pain. So it kind of hit me out of nowhere with those symptoms. So once I was able to put a name to the symptoms and to understand what that looked like for me, that was the ultimate thing that kind of slowed me down because I had to listen to my body. If I was too fatigued, I had to kind of rearrange my commitments. If I had joint pain, I had to stay in, or if I had another flare, I was out of work for a little while. So it that kind of forced me to. I was on the path to kind of doing better with self-care, but I would say that was probably the pivotal point.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you were able to recognize that you're going down the path that ultimately would lead to burnout.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like some red flags that came up for you, and also some health issues. I'm so sorry
Yeah,
to hear
no, it's
about
okay.
that. It
Yeah,
sounds
it's
like
okay.
you are able to adjust and adapt and just kind of listen to your body and what it's telling you that you can or cannot do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It definitely forced me to um, change the way that I look at like that constant go. I've always been a kind of person that's always, if I didn't have two jobs and I was like working and going to school, I was constantly, busy and kind of doing multiple things. So in a good way, I mean, no one wants a chronic illness, but I think, looking at it from a positive point of view, it slowed me down to stop and kind of make intentional steps to enjoy life, enjoy things outside of work. And it's helped me tremendously.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what our purpose is, right? What's the
Hmm.
point of working ourselves to the bone if we're not even gonna enjoy life?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did this all translate into you creating your business that specifically focuses on self-care for social workers?
So I think it probably hit me once I accepted the position in suicide prevention. I kind of realized quickly I was kind of going back into like the same habit of um, going to work, coming home, going to work, not incorporating anything in between that would be fulfilling, outside of work. And then I wasn't working two jobs, but then I was working a lot of overtime. And I was speaking with a coworker who's now a really good friend of mine, and he kind of mentioned the same thing, that he was just kind of going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home, and there was not a lot of enjoyment in between um, the work that we were doing. Of course, we enjoy our jobs, but there wasn't something that was filling us up outside of work. So we there are a couple of things that kind of um, I would say helped me realize that, like, I needed to change the way that I was looking at self-care and how I was incorporating it into my life, and how I wanted to see other people um, care for themselves. And that kind of was what prompted me to start empowering experiences. But I would say that I had to look at, the boundaries I was setting in all types of relationships. So not just my work relationships, but how was I interacting or committing with people that were outside of work, friends, relationships, and being okay with saying no, not overcommitting. I think another thing was just that I was aligning myself with people who were like-minded. So the friend that I mentioned, just kind of us both being on the same page with wellness. And I think just like learning that it's okay to put yourself first, understanding your worth, doesn't make you any less of a social worker or a therapist if you take some time for yourself, and just kind of that self-evaluation, understanding, like, when I'm better caring for myself, how do I feel? When I'm busy and I'm ignoring myself, how do I feel? And how do I make that, how do I find some balance with that? So I think kind of a number of things kind of happened that led me into um, wanting to create a community, a space for other people to kind of take care of themselves, care for themselves. And if they didn't know how to do that or where to start, that I could help them with that, because I was finding um, that that I was figuring out what it looked like to treat myself better, and how, like, what that looks like. So I wanted to be able to help other people do that.
That's awesome. So you said some really powerful things, and I wanted to make sure that we really acknowledge them and kind of unpack them. So it sounds like overall that you needed to set your boundaries. And then
Mm-hmm.
what that looked like for you was, one, saying no. Two, you have some like-minded friends who you can connect with and feel similar to, like a connection. Um,
Right.
Three, you need to put yourself first and understand that that is not being selfish. Four is finding or constantly doing self evaluation. So it sounds like
Yes.
checking in with yourself, like, how am I doing? What needs to change? What's working? What's not working?
Yep.
And then the fifth one is finding balance in life. Does that kind of sum it up?
It does. It does.
Yeah, I really like all of those. Are those like your top five like go-tos?
They are. Yeah. And I had to sit down and really think about, how I got to this space where self-care became, so important to me. And it was literally those things. The first thing was boundaries for me. I found that I was like overcommitting, overextending myself, saying yes when I really didn't want to, and then regretting it later, so I definitely the setting of the boundaries was pivotal for me in making that change.
For sure. So I'm kind of wondering, I'm curious because we hear self care and self care all the time and don't get burnt out. Why don't we practice self care more often? What is it about social workers that we will continue to just stay in this rut and work ourselves to the point of burnout, that we don't take the time for self care as opposed to other occupations? Like, my husband's a realtor, and so I'm around realtors sometimes, and they'll say, "Oh, I just had such a bad day. I'm going to go to the spa." They have no problem like doing that,
Yeah.
and they do. And other industries as well. It's just social workers, we don't think like that. So why is it that you know why don't we do more self-care?
I think that I think social workers, to a certain extent, I think that we're just so passionate about what we do, that a lot of times takes precedence over ourselves, not on purpose, I don't think, but I just think that, when you're, especially social work, I think when you're committed, and whatever, capacity you do social work in, I think that it's just a passion that we carry, and unfortunately, with that passion, we end up kind of putting ourselves last. But I was doing quite a bit of thinking about why we don't, and I kind of was trying to figure out if it was, you know wondering if it stems from our foundation. Like, I know for myself, like, I wasn't necessarily taught self-care. That wasn't something that I grew up, or even as a young adult, that it was like a conversation I was having with my family or my friends. And I don't know if I really knew what self-care was prior to going into the career field. So I think part of it is that foundation. So what you had prior to coming into the profession, and then what you learned, or what type of preparation or education or conversation you had while going through and preparing to enter the profession. Um, I think that means a lot, because if you're not having that conversation about it, you're not understanding what it is, then you kind of, you're on a pathway to probably stressing and overworking yourself. And I think a lot of people also too, like, look at it as it just being like, oh, I'm, like you said, going to the spa, or going to get my hair done, or go get a haircut. And it is those things, but it's also like recognizing, like, I keep drilling it into the ground, but setting boundaries, being able to say no, not over committing, even, forgiving people when we don't want to forgive them. I think that self-care is much deeper than that. And I think that if we struggle with those areas, or they're not as prominent, or we're not as aware in our personal lives, then you don't really have a good basis of how to tackle self-care in your professional life. I think that they're connected. I'm not saying that you can't have good self-care practices personally and then struggle professionally, but I see a correlation, and I use myself as that example, and that it was really hard for me initially to start practicing self-care, because I really didn't have a good foundation going into it. And we didn't talk about it in my grad school program. So it wasn't something that, even was on my radar, to be honest.
That makes so much sense, Tabitha. So as you were talking, I was thinking about my own foundation of self-care. So I come from a family that I was raised by my grandmother, and we didn't have a lot of money. She believed in just hard work, and you buy the necessities. Like, is it a need
Mm-hmm.
or a want? You get the need. And so
Right.
she was not practicing self-care. Like, she didn't go on vacations. Like, we're just trying to make it paycheck to paycheck. So
Right.
that is how I grew up. So you're right. When I got to be an adult, my thinking, I was in that scarcity mindset of, well, is this a need or a want? A massage is going to be a want. So let me not do it. Let me buy something I need for my quote
Yep.
self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Yeah.
not very, like, yeah, I need some new jogging shoes, but and that could be a form of self-care, but if it doesn't fill me up, if it doesn't like really rejuvenate me, and maybe it even puts more stress, like, well, great, now I have to go use these expensive ass jogging shoes because I bought them.
Right.
And
Right.
and so, and even then, I wouldn't I wouldn't have bought the expensive jogging shoes. I would have bought like the $30 ones from Ross, which there's nothing wrong with that because that's my jam. But But I totally understand like where you're coming from as far as the foundation. And it's, for me, it's something that I've had to relearn and actively practice.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
now, as part of my actively practicing self-care, one of my goals in life is to celebrate the little wins.
Yep.
So like whatever it might be, let me see. Like, it's so bad. I can't even think of what. Like it's Friday, right? Okay, like it's Friday. I can just focus on the fact that the weekend is coming. I'm going to be spending
Yep.
time with family. Whatever it might be, or maybe I had a really great conversation with a client and that was a win and they've made a little progress. Just taking time to say like, "Hey, Catherine, you did such a great job. Like, let's go, I don't know, have a drink or something." Like, I don't
Yeah.
nothing crazy, but just honoring those tiny little celebrations, it just helps us spiritually and mentally and emotionally to keep going, and to it kind of, lifts us up a little bit, and helps us know that we're making some progress. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, I think self-care is it's both. It's the little things, and it's also the big, strides that we make to improve how we care for ourselves. But definitely those small things, like I ended work on time. I didn't work over, or I finished my notes for the day. Like, whatever those small wins are, you definitely have to celebrate those too, because sometimes you don't necessarily have a big win. Sometimes it's a lot of small ones that add up to something that, is really meaningful. So for sure.
That's true. So I'm kind of wondering, I want to know a little bit about empowering experiences. Like, how do you help social workers with self care? Like, what does that look like?
So I think it's understanding what it is they need. So everybody's path to self-care is different. So for some people, it may not be, a work related problem. It might be something more personal, that's causing them to struggle with practicing self-care. So first understanding, where the holdup is, and being able to practice self-care. Then once you understood that, and that's through, us having a conversation and answering some questions that I have, kind of narrowing that down, and then working through, a game plan of how to follow through. I think I'll use myself as an example. I'm always kind of wanting to work out and live a healthier life. But when I attempt to be consistent with that action of working out and following through, it doesn't, I don't always, get it done like I would like. And I had to learn to take more small steps towards being consistent with self-care. So helping individuals understand that, like we said, those small wins, the small steps are probably, I won't say more important, but just as important as those big steps. So for me, instead of saying I'm going to go to the gym every day and spend, $50 a month on a gym pass, I'm going to walk every day on my break. So once I've consistently walking every day on my break, I'm consistent. It's become second nature. It's become a habit. I have thought about it. I've made a small, my intention is to schedule to walk every day on my break. And then the action is that I follow through and I do it. So helping individuals understand that it's about thought, intention, action, and we create a customized plan for that person, um, to work through that. And then if there's challenges along the way, we address those challenges. And it's more of a coaching style business. So, you're the individual I'm working with, they are um, they they know what it is that they need. I'm just there to support them in following through on getting to a place where they feel good about that.
Probably hold them
So
accountable too, right?
yeah, yeah. It's definitely about having, um, an accountability partner. I think, like I said in the beginning of when we were first talking, is just finding someone who is like-minded, understands the need for wellness, and somebody that can hold you accountable. What have you done for self-care this week? Let's get a plan going so that it's just as important as the clients you're serving, your family members. And we all have so many different, we're so many other things besides social workers outside of, what we do. So it's making sure that, like, what can you do to make sure that you put yourself first, even if you're a caregiver or you're a parent, or, it's kind of helping them through that path.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, do you have a story of someone that you can share that through self-care was able to like radically change their work or their life or their satisfaction or their happiness level or anything like that?
I would say not so. My business is new, so I'm not going to necessarily be able to share about someone I've worked with, but I would say that just with helping friends recognize the importance of wellness and self-care, um, does wonders. It changes your life. And I hate to sound like dramatic in that way, but self-care is revolutionary. It can change how you feel, what you think about yourself, how you allow other people to treat you. And I've been able to kind of be a voice and encourage people who I'm very close to who did not look at self-care that way. They now come to me, and kind of share wins with being able to practice self-care. And when we talk about things or plans that we have, that's in the forefront of their
Mm-hmm.
minds. They're kind of more self-care focused, that it's a lifestyle. It's not just something that you do here and there to make yourself feel better because you work too much for the week. It's literally changing the way that you treat yourself. So I am happy to say that because I have, um, been so vocal with people that I care about, that is now something that they really pay attention to. And it's something that's in the forefront of their mind. So I'm hoping to be able to work with more people who kind of understand that as well.
Yes, yeah, I can definitely see how it's so powerful because I've seen people like one of my girlfriends, she was saying how she's just having an awful day at work, or not day, but week, just stressed out and
Mm-hmm.
so bad. And she's like, I don't have time to be burnt out right now. I don't have time to just sit on my couch and not do anything. Like, I cannot use that as an excuse. And I'm like, okay, girl, it is not an excuse. For one, it is a fact. You are burnt out. You're
Yeah.
like biting my head off right now. And you
Yeah.
need to take a break because you are not going to be effective or fun to be around or productive at work or a great coworker if you are like all snappy and burnt out and, just not doing well. Um,
Absolutely.
and I was like, I wouldn't talk like that to a client, but she's my friend and I could talk like that to her. But it's just reflective of how some people think of burnout. Like, I just don't have time to be burnt out well. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
as being sick. Like, if you don't stop and take a breath, you're going to get sick. You're going to catch a cold. Your body is going to force you to slow down.
Yeah, it will always tell you to.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So I'm excited. It sounds like you have some open spots in your program. Yeah.
I do. I do. I do.
Awesome. So, first, where I want to know, we talked about some little things about that people can do right now to practice self-care, as far as celebrating the little wins, saying no, finding some like-minded friends, putting yourself first, doing a self-evaluation, checking in with yourself regularly, and trying to find a balance in life, which I know that one's easier said than done. But do
Right.
you have any tips that people could do today that might be able to just enhance their self care?
Yeah, I think, and again, it's about the small things, but it's also about, the intention and following through. So, um, for me, what helped or what helps some days when I'm not, necessarily practicing self care is maybe I would like for the week, I literally schedule in my self care. So when you're scheduling clients, or your dental appointment or whatever you have in your calendar, schedule, and it might feel silly, but schedule time in for self-care. Literally put it on the schedule, so you're holding yourself accountable to follow through on that task. Because if you just think about it and you're just like, well, maybe I'll take a walk today, or maybe I'll go get a massage, you can easily talk yourself out of that. But when you kind of make it more concrete, by literally scheduling it, in spaces that you typically hold yourself accountable to, it might change the way that you, kind of follow through on that. And then also we've kind of already talked about it, but just like having one person, accountability partner that you can check in with and, see what they've done for self-care, do something with them to practice self-care. I will say that, the best relationship that I formed coming to, this job in suicide prevention, um, is with the person I've been sharing about through this podcast. But we literally have done things that I've never done before in my life, like horseback riding, zip lining. In Georgia, you're kind of close to a bunch of different states. So taking a day trip and exploring a new city. So I think having that connection, with someone else who understands how important it is, it will help you follow through for sure. Um, Again, always evaluating when you're overextending yourself, um, making it a point to end work when it's time to end work, for the most part, if you
Mhm.
can. And I also think it's, especially in this day and time right now, with everything that we have going through with the pandemic and all the injustices of the world. But I think, also, like, to limit your social media and your news access. I think that sometimes that can be very overwhelming, and it can also kind of, increase that level of stress. Um, and you think that, social media is like an outlet, right? We always, we go to our phones because it's like, oh, I just need a break, let me look at something that, it's going to take my mind off of my work day. But, if your social media is filled with things that are stressful, things that aren't very happy, um, you find yourself not even really feeling better after taking that break, to view social media. So I'd say learning how to, like, limit that, making sure that you're taking time for yourself in the morning when you wake up and when you go to bed. Those, I've found that those 10 more minutes, even though I want that sleep, the 10 minutes that I wake up earlier, um, and I list the three things that I'm grateful for every day. I've been making this a new practice that every day I wake up and I list three things I'm grateful for. It changes my attitude. It helps me to look forward to my work day. Um, it just gives me a sense of happiness that I typically don't have. Or even like reading a book, you know, or meditating. You can pull up YouTube and literally lay in the bed
Yeah.
and and meditate. So I think it's about those small actions, making sure that it's, even if it's 10, just nothing but 10 minutes, making sure that in the morning and before you go to bed, you're kind of detoxing from your day by doing something that, like, forces you to focus on you. Even lighting a candle is self-care. That seems odd, but try it.
Mhm.
It when you light that candle before you go to bed, and it kind of like puts you in a space of relaxation, you're letting go of the day, so that when you wake up the next day, you're starting something new. um, so I'd say those are the main things that I think are easy for people to do. They're not like huge goals where it's like, go travel somewhere for a
Right.
week. It's like, although I love to travel, that's not necessarily possible right now. So those small steps of just making sure that you're caring for yourself when you wake up, before you go to bed, making sure that you're scheduling time in for yourself, even if it's just a walk outside. Like, I work from home right now due to the pandemic, but I make it a point that on my 15-minute breaks, I walk outside just to change my scenery, for a few minutes. And then I'm back and I feel refreshed and I'm kind of, able to be present again. So, it's really about the small things that seem to carry us over, that work well. And those turn into habits. And then those habits can be expanded as we feel we need.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing all of those tips. I know that before, when I was in grad school, I thought self-care was going to be like one thing, but what I've learned is
Mm-hmm.
I made a list one day. There was about 30 things on there that I do on a regular basis that's self-care. So
Wow.
it's not just one thing, it's all of these things combined that really, like you said, change your life. It changes the way that you live. So when you wake up in the morning, you might do the gratitude journal with some relaxing music and a candle, and it's a whole mood. And then you do the walking at the lunch with, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, maybe talking to your accountability partner on the phone. So it's all of these things that are really combined that truly make it super impactful.
Absolutely. And also, even like journaling. I actually wrote a self-care journal that I released not too long ago. It's called Reaching Greater Heights, A Guide to Self-Care and Self-Love. It's on Amazon, but I even small moments to journal, writing your thoughts out for today, kind of doing, you can even do like a journal dump where there's no particular structure in what you're writing, but you're just kind of letting out your thoughts for the day and your feelings. And, I think right now, it's about practical things that you can do, so you can go anywhere and get, a journal, and make sure that you take that moment for yourself also to, to kind of connect with yourself and make sure that you're caring for yourself.
Yes, for sure. So I'll have the link to the gratitude journal in the show notes. Where can people find you, get in contact with you, and learn more about your program?
Absolutely. So my website is www.empoweringexperiences.net. I'm also on Instagram right now. Same handle, except it's Empowering Experiences LLC. And by email, reach tabithayounger@gmail.com.
Thank you. Awesome.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much, Tabitha. I really enjoyed having you on the show today.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you loved it, write a review and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. This just helps other people just like you find us and join our community. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram. You can find me at Social Workers Rise. I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.